All right, well, we already got indications last week at the Fox Business presidential debate that the bromance is off between Ted Cruz and Donald Trump. But the latest broadside has to do with Cruz going after Donald Trump on whether he's a real conservative, particularly on those infamous bank bailouts in the middle of the meltdown. Back then, Donald Trump said he supported them grudgingly. On this show, listen.
It's sad, but probably it's something that has to get done, because your financial system is most likely going to come to a halt if it doesn't. So it's a pretty sad day for this country.
Are you for this Obama stimulus that was signed into law today?
Well, something had to be done, and whether it's perfect or not, nothing's perfect. And, you know, it's a whole trial and error thing. This is far, far more severe than the early 80s.
Do you really think so? I mean, back then, we had higher unemployment. You could argue that we might be headed there, but geez, Donald, I look at these numbers. I don't see the depression comparison.
Well, Neil, when you look at the banks, I mean, had trillions of dollars not been poured into the banks, you would have an insolvent banking system, and then you would absolutely have 1929.
All right, now, if you listen closely to what Donald Trump was telling me back then, in the midst of the meltdown, in between two administrations, the end of the Bush years, the beginning of the Obama years, is that we had no choice. Now, a number of CEOs, like Jack Welch at the time, said that credit was freezing, cash was locking up, and we had to do what we did. That was essentially Donald Trump's view then. He went on to say that the stimulus, even though he accepted it with a grain of salt, was still something that had to be tried. Again, his views then, some doubts since now. But now he's running for president of the United States, and now some conservatives are saying that kind of rescue, that kind of government involvement started the handouts that technically began with George Bush and continued with Barack Obama. Well, at least conservatives like Ted Cruz, handouts on steroids. So, how does radio talk show host Gina Loudon view all of this? She, of course, has said very complimentary things about Donald Trump in the past, and you're hearing all of this and this pile on Mr. Trump. What do you make of what he said then versus the conservative stance Ted Cruz says he is all but feigning now?
I think that this campaign has proven, this election cycle has proven, Neil, that we are playing a completely different ball game than we've ever played in an election cycle before. Donald Trump has changed and broken all the rules. He has confounded consultants and analysts and news media, and it just isn't the same game. So if I were Ted Cruz, if I were advising Ted Cruz, I would say stick to what made your poll numbers rise, and that was being the gentleman who was the only candidate not firing on Donald Trump, because Donald Trump's supporters know that he has a sketchy political past, but he is not held to the same standard, Neil, as your typical politician.
I know what you're saying, but I think what Ted Cruz is saying, he should be. And by the way, I'm only responding to attacks leveled at me. You know how that goes if we have kids. I mean, when they go at each other, he started, and I understand that. But he's trying to say, all you conservatives who might be thinking of leaving me, you should take a closer look at the guy you're going to. Now, you and I talked back at the time of the meltdown, and there were many, many conservatives at the time, within even the Bush administration at the time, including the president at the time, who said we had no other choice to do what we did then. I was against those bailouts then. I remained against bailouts of almost any sort now. But the die was cast then. There were a lot of conservatives who supported it then, and that hell hath no fear if we didn't do something then. The late, great Jack Kemp among them. So, is it so bad for Donald Trump to come back and say, yeah, what I told Neil back then made sense? I think, in retrospect, those bailouts made sense, and I'm going to stand by it. Or is it dangerous?
Oh, I definitely think that with his base of support, for him to stand by that at this point would be dangerous. I would go, if I were advising Trump, I would go to what he's done so far. And he said, you know, my job then was to build things. If I am leader of the free world, I'm going to be taking the best, most solid economic advice. And as I've grown in my political know-how.
Kiddo, but that sounds like potentially a cop-out, something Donald Trump generally does not do. I mean, say what you will of Trump, even when asked on why he was going after the citizenship thing with Ted Cruz at the debate last week, he told me, well, because the guy's up in the polls. So he is honest about where he's going with this. But is this a tempest in a teapot for him, or like all these other, issues that have come up that just falls often?
I think think, one of the examples of when he didn't necessarily apologize, which I know isn't his what he likes to do, but Neil, one of the examples he gave is his change on abortion.
Right.
He said that he had a friend who went through it, and that this friend who ended up not aborting the baby had such a great experience, and that completely changed the way he thought of it. I think that real people in America understand political evolution in real people. Since Donald Trump hasn't been a politician all of his life, he's not held to a record per se that the other politicians are held to. So he just gets a pass on this stuff. Whether it's fair or not to good politicians like Ted Cruz, it just is the reality of where the mind of the electorate is right now. And I think that people trust Donald Trump on two things so much: that is his power to negotiate, and that he wants to truly make business great in America again. And I just don't think he has to defend
Real quickly, Gina, we're getting word that he might be getting a big backing by Sarah Palin today.
Yes.
Would that make a big difference to you?
I think that makes a difference to a lot of conservatives.
Right.
I think some of the endorsements he's getting are playing well with conservatives. I certainly do.
Okay, we're going to have a lot more details on that, what to make of this mystery endorsement that's supposed to be just hours away. In the meantime, Gina Loudon, thank you very, very much.
Thank you,
All
Neil.
right, now, whether you're in Iowa